You have created a monster and it will destroy you.
She's alive! Alive!
I am Dracula.
Hello, monster friends. Here we are on a live and on location shooting of Monster Manor, and I'm excited to announce our first guest today. We're going to have three of these interviews, and then maybe even a surprise with some wonderful karaoke or scary karaoke a little bit later. And of course, will be here as well with this welcome fun. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my friends from Eerie, Florida. We have Mark Muncy, and his wife Carrie. And this is the first time that I've gotten to interview, although we did have this plan.
Yeah, we've been off and on talking for a little while. So.
Yes. We met at this
Yeah, Saturday last month.
Yeah, and I was amazed at something we talked about the stories we had. So tell us a little bit about your history. What got you into the paranormal and the history of Florida?
Well, we started with my stuff started when I was a kid. It goes back to spooky happenings. I grew up in Ohio, West Virginia. So up in the tri-state area, they called it. And my dad was a Greyhound vice president. So we hit all the small towns, all the stories, and all the creepy legends and all that. And then when we moved to Florida in the 1980s, my dad had come down because of the Skyway Bridge disaster, where the bridge collapsed in Tampa Bay, and a Greyhound bus crashed off the bridge, which was the worst, disaster in history for Greyhound. But my dad fell in love with the area, and he moved us all down here. And so, of all the dark reasons that come to the Sunshine State, I guess we just ingrained into it. So when we got here, was just always attracted to it, to unusual things and creepy things, and eventually to where we opened our own haunted house in our home, and got drawn into the Florida history behind it in an odd way. We were digging a grave in our yard, and we came across seashells. And I'm like, wow, we're way inland for seashells. And then, of course, now knowing Florida was all underwater at some point, but then we also found some bones. And I'm like, oh, we found a crime scene. So we call the cops, and they come out. Hey, gang, how you doing? And they said, oh, it's not a crime scene, it's a historical. This is a shell midden. This is an Indian midden.
Oh.
And I'm like, and they were like, but I'm just glad it's not one of the lost cemeteries in Tampa Bay. And I'm like, lost cemeteries in Tampa Bay? How have I never heard of this? And so, of course, start looking into that in the archives and libraries back in the days before internet, young ones. And suddenly I found out there's 7 or 8 missing, cemeteries in Tampa Bay. One of them was called Hillview, and of course the Tales from the Crypt fan in me said, "Oh well, we've got to make our haunted house Hillview Cemetery." Yes. And that ran in my backyard for 20 years on the remains of a Native American midden. They did an archaeological survey of the site, and they were like, "It's just a garbage midden." So there weren't any human bones; it was alligator bones and stuff like that. So it was just a historical side record. So then that became our hook for the haunted house. Instead of having a werewolf jump out at you, we had the skunk ape jumping out at you. Instead of random vampire, we had Madame Orr, a famous bordello owner from Tampa Bay. So, crazy stuff. And that's where the love comes from. And then, met the love of my life a few years ago, and we started doing Eerie, Florida, with real legends, real monsters, real lore. And for those monsters that wouldn't pose for beautiful things because they only pose for blurry photos, that was her specialty, bringing them to life.
Yes, very, very good match there.
Yes.
The words and the visuals. Did you, obviously you can't go to school for this sort of thing. Did you have early mentors or early inspirations when you were seeking?
Yeah, when we first started, I reached out to all the great experts in the field, and the guy who responded the most was Charlie Carlson. And he had written the great Weird Florida, and he had kind of semi-retired, and we went to meet him. This was back in the early days at Hellview, and he came down and helped us sculpt the stories. He's most famous. Probably besides Weird Florida, he also did the story breakdown for Blair Witch Project. It was basically the Hog Island Witch, which is a legend from Brooksville, and then they translated it to Burkittsville, Maryland, a town to make it a New England legend, even though it's an old Swamp Witch Florida legend.
Oh, nice.
But Charlie was, an early mentor, a good friend, the great Al Going Back.
Yes.
Bram Stoker, lifetime award-winning Bram Stoker author. He was one of my early mentors that helped. And when I first started writing, I was doing ghost writing a lot. So the late great Nick Pilata, who passed away a few years ago. People don't know who he was. He wrote 81 novels and only, I think, 6 were in his own name. He wrote for TSR. He wrote for a lot of the old role-playing game companies and stuff like that. But he also wrote a lot of the Mac Bolan books and the Don Pendleton Stony Man series and all that. And he actually got me my first job as ghostwriting. He had booked his hard too much and got me to write a few books for him too. So I was like, hey, $500 a book back then. 88, 89 money, that was my rent.
Yeah.
So that was nice. So, but yeah.
Wow, so interesting beginnings with that.
Yeah, and as I said, they were the mentors of the day.
Right.
And but inspiration, always Shirley Jackson.
Yeah.
I always go back to Shirley Jackson. She had a way with the haunting. The original book is probably still one of the scariest books I've ever read. And then Al's book, Crota, was probably the second scariest book I've ever read.
Yeah.
So I always go back to those two.
I'll have to check his work out as well, because going in the circles, the conventions, all of these people, it's such a small, tight-knit community.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why we're here today, obviously.
Yeah.
To support Coffee Shop of Horrors and of course, everything that Nick and Matt have done. And by the way, we are at Jonesy's Cafe in Barry's. If you're in the area, come out. I mean, we're going to be here all night, literally until midnight, so definitely do that.
Right on the train station. It's awesome. Yeah, there's tons of fun stuff to do here.
Lots of stuff, and you're not far away from Orlando, and you're not far away from from Ocala. You can go visit the wonderful Silver Springs. See where
See where the Creature from Black Lagoon
we
was
actually
filmed.
have that
It's
behind
playing
you.
over there. It keeps distracting us. Sorry.
Yes.
We keep looking off to the right because Creature from Black Lagoon's up on the screen. And I'm like, oh, that's Silver Springs. I know that. So yeah.
Yes, that is Silver Springs.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, there's so much going on here, and it's kind of one of those. OCD just showed up too. But yeah, there's so much going on here. But when you're in the shows, oftentimes when you're at a booth, you don't get to really venture out and mingle that much. So I'm interested in following up a lot more, reading more from your work as well, because it's very interesting and spooky and educational at the same time.
Well, what's fun is we also go in deep into the history behind the thing. So it's not just, there's the skunk ape, but we go into areas of skunk ape lore and history.
Right.
So we get to talk about things like the Ocheesee Pond incident, which a lot of people are like, what's that? And it was where this small town up in the Panhandle they were being attacked by something. Something was stealing food and attacking the animals outside. They thought, okay, we've got a native or something. Something's restless here. This is 1800s. So what do they send out? They send out a posse, and what do they come back with? A giant hairy man. This giant creature, and they don't know what to call it, so they call it the wild, cheesy wild one. And they don't know what to do with it, so they attach it in a cage to a stagecoach and send it to Tallahassee to the governor. We got to send him to the governor. I don't know what the heck to do with this guy. And then the governor doesn't know what the heck to do with it, so he sends it off to the nearby insane asylum, the state home for the insane. And then that's the last record of it, is that they took it in to be shaved, and it's never heard from again. So it makes the news. It goes all over the country. Of course, yellow journalism being what it was at the time.
Yeah.
Wild man captured and all this. There's a great illustration of the of this giant thing that's so big it's standing out of a cage. Two guys with muskets on it.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's a famous newspaper article, and so the Florida Bigfoot was caught, long ago. And that's one of those stories. It's like you don't hear about that on Finding Bigfoot or anything like that. But there is a history of this. You got to look at the history behind it too. So that's part of the fun.
I took it for granted, but I think the first time I ever knew anything about that lore was the Legend of Rocky Creek. I think that was the first time that and it's like, really? There's potentially a Bigfoot here in Florida, but I don't know.
Yeah, the skunk ape. Everybody thinks Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
Florida has at times it actually outpaces the Pacific Northwest because you look at Florida from space. I love telling this. You look at it from space, right? At night, and you see those bright lights all along the beaches because we all live out on the beaches, and then the big cities that support the beaches, the Jacksonville's, the Miami's, and then the heart, you got Orlando and all the tourist stuff, but then you see all the dark spots, the Everglades, the Ocala National Forest, which is one of the biggest forests in the world, and then the Green Swamp, the home of all the floodwaters and everything. And it's crazy that all that, and you just little spots of light. Look at Tavares here in the middle of that. You go 5 miles in any other direction, there's nothing.
Yeah.
And so that's where all these sightings and unusual things
Plenty of hiding areas.
Plenty of places for them to live and hide, and that's what we go out with these teams, and they find some crazy stuff. So, not saying it's there, but we're not saying these people don't see nothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is that if there is a legend for something, cryptozoology, there's a reason for that legend. Whether it's Loch Ness or whatever, there is a reason.
Or historical.
Yes, yeah. So I've always been intrigued by that. You guys also touch on unidentified foreign flying objects. And,
a little bit of everything. We go out on UFO hunts. We do a lot of ghost hunts.
Yeah.
Of course, our third book, Creepy Florida, is nothing but ghosts. Carrie's like a ghost lodestone, though. Anywhere we go, she just sorts them out. So that's part of the fun. So.
I'm pretty oblivious. He's a little more sensitive, but I'm just like off in the corner taking pictures, whatever.
Yes. Is that what inspires you to do a lot of the work that you do in sketch form? Because you're a graphic artist for the books. Is that where you draw your experiences from going around to these different locations? Do you see this and then draw it, or?
I go by descriptions because, I don't really usually see anything, so I just like to look at as many different descriptions as I can, and then I try to riddle out, okay, what are they actually seeing? And we look at, like, other sketches done by witnesses, and just try to put it all together, and then I add a little bit of my flair to it.
Yeah, you almost need to, though, because that's the thing, is that everyone's going to put their fingerprint on art. It's like, it's as individual as writing, or styles you can recognize, so I mean, you actually even submitted something for our raffle basket.
Yeah.
Beautiful piece. I don't know if we can actually reach it.
But it's Pinky the Sea Monster. Yeah. If you go to Eerie, Florida, you can see it. So EerieFlorida.com is one of our iconic symbols. This is now, Florida loves to name things, right? They can't call it the St. John's River Monster or the Beast of Florida. No, it's Pinky. Because it's the color of boiled shrimp.
Is this a better camera angle?
It sank a couple steamships in the 1800s and had a big shell on its back, but was bright pink.
So people thought an albino seal or an albino manatee, but one of the witness sightings said the head of it was on one side of the water, the tail was on the other side, and it was about a flour barrel size width across, and it with that big gray shell on its back. So, how do you draw that? Well, Carrie found a way. So, that's the beauty. So.
It's really detective work. You got to put a lot of pieces
It's
together.
fun because I also look at actual animals and try to think about how it would really look and how it's related to other species.
And the anatomy behind it, physiology. That you can tell the true artist, the person that wants to find out what's under the skin. Awesome, beautiful work. Thank you for contributing to the fundraiser for
Yeah,
here.
We love Jonesy. Coffee Shop Horrors is a staple at all the horror cons.
Yes.
And
We have lived on their coffee.
everybody has. Yeah, we've been booth buddies, like right beside them or behind them for some reason. Like every spooky, they put us near them, which is perfect.
Oh, and it always smells great.
Theirs is one of the better smells I think I can recall at conventions.
Yeah, definitely. There are some not so much.
Yes.
So,
So, you've been doing this for a while now. What are some of the favorite things that you have written about? I know that's like picking your favorite kid.
It is. I mean, there's some really scary locations that we've done, like the Dozier School for Boys. They had just uncovered that whole story when we were just getting started, which is a school up in North Florida that really did terrible things. It was basically 100 years of state-sponsored child abuse. It's terrible, and we're just now uncovering it. And they're still investigating it. So that's probably one of those scary places.
Yeah.
But like best places, the hidden gems, right? That's what you look for. There's a place in Bartow called the Wonder House. It was a famous tourist attraction in the 30s, but then it went abandoned for years, and we thought it was lost. And it was just that creepy place in Bartow. But a young couple bought it, and they're restoring it, and it's amazing. And they were so sad that it wasn't haunted when they bought it, because they were the right people buying this place, right? And they were so sad it wasn't haunted. But they've started doing like the Addams Family, collecting all this creepy stuff and all this. And so
a collection of old books, random bones,
an executioner sword from Germany, and of course now they've got ghosts. So it's like they got what they wanted at the Harley. But that's just an amazing, and they just started opening for tours again. So definitely reach out to Wonder House on Facebook. Awesome. So that was like the hidden gems. That's what the ones that stand out.
So what's next for you guys as far as because I know that we've all kind of been shut down because of the pandemic the last couple of years. So this is like one of the first few events. Of course, we had Olo and the Central Florida Comic Con. What's your idea of shows? What do you like to do for your conventions and your appearances?
Well, our next project is Eerie Appalachia. That's the next book. We're actually going back to my roots of Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia.
He was originally from up in that area.
So I got to go up there. We did some traveling. We were supposed to do that last year. Wound up being early this year. And we got to get the stuff we needed for that. So that'll be coming out at Christmas. But for shows, I mean, we do Comic Cons. We're doing Tampa Bay Comic Con. We're doing MegaCon, Fanboy Expo, Sinister Nights down in Miami. That's a first year con from the guys who used to do Horror Hound.
Right.
And then, of course, Phantasm. We're super excited for Phantasm. And then Spooky, of course, Spooky Empire. But we also do the paranormal cons, like Southwest Florida Paranormal Con. They're coming back next year. They did virtual the last 2 years. Coast to Coast AM Live. I'm usually a guest there, and that's been delayed a couple years. So fingers crossed this year we'll be there. And then next year with Appalachia, we're hopefully going to be Mothman and Mothman Festival and Cryptid Con. And now that we're on a couple Discovery Channel, History Channel shows, we can finally leave the state. It's like official that we can leave the state. So we'll see where we go from there. So
do you find that there's a different, like when you go to these different shows, you go to Comic Cons, you go to Horror Cons, is there a different reception for your work at each of those?
It's completely different, right? I mean, it's the Comic Cons, we stand out like a sore thumb because everything's all Superman, Batman, and then what's this Loch Ness Monster looking thing? So that works for us. We've been a guest at MegaCon a couple times, but we actually kind of like prefer to be like a booth area because when we're lumped in with the comic creators, it just kind of we don't fit. And it's funny because we're big with the right crowds. Like we can walk down the street, nobody knows. Occasionally, I'll get somebody, hey, I know you from somewhere. I'm like, you watch History Channel, you might have seen me. Yeah, but then at some cons, it's we got a line a mile long because we're big with a certain crowd, the paranormal cryptic crowd. So that's nice to see. It's scary to think, why have I got a line and who does it, and stuff like that. But it's fun to see. But yeah, the horror cons, they're always fun. We love everybody there. So.
Honestly, any kind of folklore and ghosts, especially shared info.
Yeah.
Like gosh, when I was a kid, I read every folklore and ghost story book I could in the library, just like constantly.
Yeah. But I know what you mean because for me, I was always more into the monsters and the horror. So I got all the Carriage House books and the different things from the school fairs that were all monsters.
Oh yeah, the Scholastic days. Yeah.
Every once in a while, you come across those paranormal books or the book about the Bigfoot or
the old monsters and Edgar Casey and stuff like that. Yeah.
So I always enjoyed that we switch on things. But
and that's what inspired these. That was the thing is I'd tell these stories and people would be like, I've never heard that story, and we had written the stories for our website for the haunted house. And then people would be like, I've never heard that story. I'm like, you made that up. And I'm like, no, it's a legend. And and that's kind of what became Eerie was, look, these are real, and there's the history behind it. So yeah, that was always fun. So.
I'm going to get a little bit personal with your own ideas here. Obviously, that with the coming out of like Baggins and the different paranormal shows that have been out there, do you find that there have been like copycats that are just going in there for the money or just for the appearance or the show of it, but they don't really believe in this stuff? And
it's a mix. I mean, there's a lot. I get accused of that a lot. Is whenever I'm on a show, somebody's like, "Oh, he's just writing books." You can see by his titles, he's just in it for the money. I'm like,
well, they're
really?
not reading.
I'm like, yeah, obviously. Yeah, and then they're not experiencers because they're just telling the stories of these. I mean, we went with these people on these experiences, and we've had experiences. It's just that's not all I'm writing about. So. There is that kind of gatekeeping in this, genre. And the paranormal, like even just a few years ago, the Bigfoot people wouldn't talk to the UFO people. UFO people wouldn't talk to the ghost people. The ghost people wouldn't talk to, anybody. And it was just, and then, now look at the Travel Channel, look at Discovery Channel, look at History Channel. There's no travel, there's no history. It's all Zach Bagans. It's all things like that. So, that's where the money is. Of course, that's where everybody's gravitating. But honestly, with us, we want the story. We want the experiences. And I'm a huge history buff, and so he
comes towards it with that perspective.
Yeah, it's like, why is this here? What is this story here? We've got a legend in Tampa Bay called Mini Lights, and it's this mini lights. Stay away, don't go out at night, or mini lights will get you.
Right.
And it was all these crazy, and I would talk about it, and people on the north side of town, you never heard that story. People on the south side of town, deathly afraid of mini lights. You don't go out at night. You get your children. And then I found another version of Mini Lightning, the voodoo queen of St. Pete, and her alligator men would steal your children. So little alligator men. I'm like, where does this story come from? This is insane. And then, sure enough, we started digging into the history, and we found out about an alligator farm in St. Petersburg, and that they would kidnap children and throw them into the alligator pit and let the alligators chase them around for entertaining tourists. So Mini Lights was actually men with lights. You wear the men with lights, kidnap your children, or the alligator men, you kidnap your children. That's where the real legend comes from. And that's scarier than any voodoo queen or alligator monster. And so that's when we get into that. It's like, oh my God, this was the 1930s. This isn't that long ago.
No.
So, and people were doing this. And sure enough, in the History Museum in St. Petersburg, we find a fan that's like advertising it with this little kid being chased by an alligator. I've got like a copper tone ad. It's just insane.
I'm speechless when you hear stuff like that. I mean, there is always the real enemies there. But something like that, where it's grounded in reality, that's almost more terrifying.
Exactly. That's the stuff that scares me more. I'm not worried about Jason or Freddy. I'm worried about the guy who's going to spill my children to an alligator pit. You
Those
know?
are the true.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, and I mean that's disturbing, but I gotta read your books. I gotta read your books because I'm sure they're loaded with stuff.
And that's the problem, is you have to laugh at it sometimes.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, people go, "Oh, you just told this terrible story about the Dozier School for Boys," and then you kind of chuckled it off. I'm like, I have to.
No.
Otherwise, I'm not speaking.
Yeah, and that's the thing is for the people that think that this is easy and talking about this easy, there might be a laugh reaction, but let me tell you, it's especially when you have a heart for kids. If you have kids,
They're grown kids, but still.
I've got them like stair steps from 6 on up to 15, and it's like you never want to see children in peril. I mean, we do a lot of charity work for Give Kids for a great charity,
Our
and
haunted house was child.
yeah, and you work with kids, you don't do that, but it's interesting to hear the stories. I worked out on a mask for a proof of concept where I wanted me to like to. So I was very interested to hear that take, and that's why I'm a little bit stunned by it. It's a real one,
And as you said, and I think that maybe like was that the Joey Vitale? Yeah. He reached out to me about the story, and when I told him that part of the story, he was just like, "Oh God, I don't know if I can make this now." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, dude. That's history." But so
all I have to do is help the mask, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah,
so
creepy stuff.
Yeah.
Creepy stuff.
It's unreal. So what book was that in?
That's in Eerie. That's in Eerie, Florida. That was our first one. It was one of the first.
Close to us.
Yeah. The Eerie, Florida was originally going to be just Eerie, Tampa Bay, and then History Press said, "No, make it all of Florida." So we did. And then when that hit the bestseller, they were like, "Hey, remember you said you had all those extra stories?" Yeah. And that was suddenly we were allowed to do Freaky Florida, which was a lot bigger, a lot deeper. We got to go a lot more into it and stuff like that. So we had a lot of fun with that one. And then right before the pandemic, just came out October 2019, was Creepy Florida, which was all ghosts, because they asked us to do an entire ghost film. So, and that was fun. That was the first one they get to color instantly.
Yeah.
So we got to have fun with the photography.
Wow. And those are all available on your
EerieFlorida.com. You can find them anywhere. We're History Press has us everywhere.
Yeah.
So you can find us in Cracker Barrels and truck stops and
Or support
Walgreens. Support your local bookstore. That's the best place for it. But if you order from EerieFlorida.com, Carrie and I'll scribble a little something in them, just like we were at a con. And or you can find us at any of those conventions. Go to EerieFlorida.com to see all the events we're at.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating stuff. I can't tell you to meet you guys in person and find out that you're so nice and so willing to help out in the community, but to find out that there's such a talent behind it as well. I'm
Grew three
really
times right
impressed.
there.
I'm really impressed with you guys. So I know we talked like before the show. I threw out there, and I always love the answers to this. What is the one thing or a couple of things that you just haven't gotten to yet that have been a passion for you? What are those dream projects?
What do you think, Carrie? What's your dream project?
I don't know. I love doing what we do. I love going around taking pictures.
Just whatever we come up with. I'll be honest, we just got to do the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum for the new book up in West Virginia, and we got to do Waverly Hills, which is like a lot. They're infamous, but they're amazing places. They're Kirkbride hospitals, so they're designed well. They look creepy as heck when you go into them. They all have tons of history. But honestly, I think the ones that, the dream goal would be to go back to Europe. I haven't been since the last time I was in Romania was when it was still communist Romania in 1989, right before the wall fell. So I had to go through the Berlin checkpoint and all that. So, and I'm dealing with KGB agents interviewing me. Why are you here in Romania? I'm coming to see Dracula's castle.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what tourism was back then.
Yeah.
I was just starting back then. So that's what started it all. Yeah, and I'd love to go back to that now that we're doing what we're doing. If I was a kid then, I'd love to go back now with some history behind me and and do some work.
I always tell him wherever he wants to go, I'll come along. He's great at finding the neat places.
Yeah, and I'm sure you can pick out the pictures to draw.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be the dream project. Get back to Europe, Erie, Europe. Yeah, we have a strange following for Eerie, Florida, and Europe. I've been on a couple of British podcasts and a couple of British TV shows as their token American. So good stuff.
Well, they have a lot more history than we do.
Yeah, that's where all the history comes from.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So I'm intrigued by that myself because we don't understand the history of 200, 300, 400, 500-year-old
It just disappears.
Yeah.
For America, it disappears. 1880 is that's when Florida history starts, even though it's around 1500s for Europe, and way before that for like Timbuktuans, Appaloosa, and all
Like
that.
almost nothing is preserved.
Those original
Florida.
and those original tribes, they're not even around. There's not even any claims to be descendants of the Menorcans or the Timbuktuans, because they were all wiped out by the Europeans. And, so we've got to bite what we can. It is what it is.
So one other thing I would love to ask you, because we have had probably 18 months, and one of the things that kind of slipped in there that I don't know how many people actually saw this, because it's like we have so much other stuff going on, and then we get word that the U.S. government and Israel have said, yeah, they're aliens.
Well, they're
UFOs, and everyone's like, yeah, but I'm too worried about arguing about this. What are your thoughts on that? The UFOs.
Well, we talked. We went into Gulf Breeze a lot in Erie, and then so we really got into that whole community and all that. We got in with MUFON. We've done Alien Con. So many. And that's actually one of the things. The reason we started in Erie, Appalachia, is I was looking into an event in Miami called the Crescent Sighting, which was the next Florida book was actually going to be all about Florida UFOs. And but then suddenly a trail got hot, and I had to follow it. This trail, so we went to interview some the Crescent Sighting. All right, have I got a minute here?
Yes.
So I don't want to go long. All right. So the Crescent Sighting there was a school north of Miami called Crestview Elementary, and there's kids out in the playground, and you see something weird flying overhead. There's a military base nearby, so I thought maybe it was a helicopter or something. But the teacher comes out, and they both look up at this, and they're like, "What is this?" Now, this is 1960s, and can't figure out what it is. But then it flies away. So whatever. The next day, everybody at school's talking about what did Johnny see? What did Johnny see? It comes back, and it brings friends. And not miles away, it comes right to the school. It comes right to the field, right across the street, behind the fence. And it's a big saucer, dome, turret type thing, little flying spinner ships, which we would now call Tic Tacs after the Navy thing. So, and so, and these kids are all students, and then the teachers are saying hundreds of witnesses.
Right.
And then it disappears, flies away super fast. And again, they're all like, what did we see? The military show up, start interviewing everybody, start asking questions. And then one of the kids says, well, they were hovering like helicopters. So the next day in the newspaper, strange ships are helicopters. And we're like, so you're right with you, man. Awesome. But anyway, so 50 years go by, nobody talks about it. It was helicopters. Facebook shows up. Then the news starts coming out about UFOs possibly being real. And all these kids are now in their Facebook groups in their 60s going, this wasn't helicopters, these were aliens. This was weird stuff. This was strange stuff. So they, so I get in touch with a few people from that group, and they're like, you got to talk to this one guy. And so I have a contact now, and I got to talk to him. And he's running for an office down there, so he can't announce just yet. But he had a notebook. The government man came to his house to talk to him, and his dad has this little address book and wrote down all the names. So now I have government names I can look up, and so the history guy's like, I can piece together where they're at, and sure enough, one of the names was like Lieutenant Sinclair. Okay, that's pretty easy to find. Corporal Smith from the Coast Guard. That's gonna be tough. But the third one was the government man, and his name was Colt. And now, if you're in the paranormal field, the UFO field, that name sends shivers down your spine because there's a famous incident in West Virginia called Henry Colt. And it's this man who bumped into an alien who called himself Henry Colt, and he's smiling with a grinning man. And it's this incident that happened 6 months prior to this. If he works for the government, there's our men in black, all these things, and that's what led us on the Eerie Appalachian. So yes, UFOs, whatever, people see stuff. What are they seeing? We don't know. I find it hard to go from, I saw something straight in the sky to aliens from another galaxy, but it could be anything. Yeah. So that was something unusual. We've talked to witnesses. That one boat captain had a black triangle come up under his ship, and then so it was a USO, and unidentified submerged object. He thought he was under a whale because his depth finder went from 1,000 feet to 20 feet, and then it flew up and hovered over his ship. This big black triangle, a couple hundred feet. These three guys trying to take pictures of it, and it's not, getting anything because it's black on black.
Right.
Try taking a picture of your nightstand next to you, at night with the light off, you're going to get a big black. Nothing. So he's like, was I drinking? Yeah. Or was drinking? Fishing. I'm out in the middle of the water. But was, a couple of beers. I'm not, drunk. And then, but when he's talking, hairs on his arm, just standing on in. He saw something. And so what did he see? Who knows? It was up near the Air Force Base. It was up near Pensacola Naval Base. So it could be some strange government project. It's definitely something unusual. So that's what we tell all these people. We like to call the stuff preternatural, right? Instead of supernatural. Stuff we don't understand yet. It's a tribute to Shirley Jackson. She came up with that word, the haunting Hill House. It was, because for years we didn't understand magnetism. So magnets don't exist. We don't know what you're talking about. And then, now they do. And now we understand it. So, and that's chiropractic medicine. There's schools that still won't teach it because it's not legit medicine. But is it? It's going to be should be taught, And that's this. I think if enough money got invested, we know a lot more about this stuff.
I mean, it's only better. It has to be. Because now communication to people who have seen the same thing, it's instant. It's harder to shut that stuff down when you have the World Wide Web and social media. If someone sees something, everyone's going to see, hey, I saw this. Plus, we carry around our cameras. Whereas before,
things are turning, and it's always fun to be there when it is.
And it's always interesting to me that when you see, like average people like you and me, if we saw something, it would be harder for us to convince people. But when astronauts or government officials, pilots, they actually report this stuff. I think there needs to be a little more weight to it.
Yeah, 100%.
And then, of course, with world footage, I'm sure that a lot of the stuff that we would consider cryptozoological is going to come to light really quick.
I mean, we're already finding more and more. We always joke about the coelacanth, just years ago, and now the giant squid, and they didn't think there'd be any in the Florida waters, and now we're seeing them in the, we found one in the Gulf, just a few months ago. So we're getting deeper, we're going into darker places, we're stumbling over things.
And I know we're coming close. What time are we at now? Do we have time for one more question? Okay, so this is one that's been on my mind for a while, debunking certain things. Because obviously technology, it allows us to see a lot more than we suspected, but sometimes they surprise us with things. Now, I remember the Mariana Trench that we're talking about, certain things there. Walls that they can now see through the waters. When you see something like this, people use telepatry when you used to talk about the theory of Atlantis. But now, what are all these naysayers going to say if someday we do say,
find something, and that's some of the things. We debunk quite a bit in our books. We debunked the Devil's Chair, a famous location in Casadega. Now, we're not saying it's not haunted, but we are saying it's not the things that they think it is. It's not the Devil's Chair. but we find the history of Florida and we're able to piece it together. But there are other stories that, the deeper you go, the weirder it gets. And you're like, okay, now this doesn't make sense, so what is
When it
this?
doesn't make sense, that it's more like
Something unusual. Yeah, that's when the stories don't make sense. That's when we go, okay, there's something here because it doesn't make sense. It's not fitting a story pattern or a Hollywood tale. This is something that doesn't quite match, and then you're like, aha, got something here.
Now that's a good question too. When you're going into a case like that, do you go to try to prove it like a debunk, or do you try to prove it as a reality? And
We're not really there for that. We're there for the story. So we go with the teams. So some teams are there to prove, we go with paranormal teams, we go with skunk ape teams, we go with UFO hunters, and they're there for their side. They want to prove it to us that they're seeing this stuff, and we're like, we just want the story. We're here for the story. Yeah, so we like to call ourselves like parajournalists more than anything else, because that's the fun part is watching them do their job, getting their story as well as getting what we want. So it's pretty cool, some of the things that come out, and so to say we're in it for this, we're in it for that, it's not really. We're there because we want to document what's happening.
that's the best kind of journalism. It's not about it. It's not about ego. It's about what are the facts. What am I observing?
Yeah, I mean, like if we were on Travel Channel show or this from show, you have to have evidence, otherwise you've got no show. We're not that. We're there to see what happens. If we don't get any evidence, we don't get any evidence. But I can usually find some history that'll be exciting. It's nearby, so it's pretty easy. We stumble on all these crazy characters throughout history, Lightning McQueen up in the Panhandle. People like Lightning McQueen was in Florida. Yeah, he's quite colorful history. A Scottish mercenary, Gregor McGregor. I mean, you don't get more Scottish than that. He was a pirate in Florida. Nobody talks about it. So that's the stuff I like. So when we get to that, it's like, you find the fun stuff.
I love that. And I look forward to reading some of your books too. I gotta make the time for that because they are fascinating. So we are almost at the end of this, but best ways to contact you again on social media or websites?
It's at Eerie Florida or EerieFlorida.com. At Eerie Florida on all the social medias, and just reach out. It all comes to me. There's email us if you have a story, if you have something you may have missed. That's where we get it all. So
I might have to contact you about our daughter's friend, Beamer, that she swears lives in the walls. Very interesting. She's 6 years old and has a different outlook on
that's good stuff. No, we get. We also get. I get a lot of, since I'm not supposed to say I get a lot of. Hey, I've got this weird thing, and I need somebody to look into it, but I don't want any press. I don't want you to write me about it. Get in touch with me because I know all the paranormal groups and all that. I will get you in touch with you right now. So we'll do that too. So we do that a lot too. I like to help people with that. So.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. So we'll next see you, or I will see you next at Phantasm. I look forward to sharing some time with you there.
We'll be there.
But it has been a real pleasure to talk to you. Thank you guys for coming by, and we'll have next up, since we're coming up on the end here, we will have next Tony Greco, and I believe Shelley Stokes. If she's not here, she should be here soon to talk more about Phantasm and the Shock Reel Cinema Film Festival. So we have a lot of stuff coming up today.
Exciting.
You're here until when?
We're here until 6 or 7 tonight.
6 or 7? So if you are in the area, again, this is for Coffee Shop Horrors and Force Jones Escape in Tavares. Come out. We're going to be here all night. So please lend some support. If you're in the haunted industry, you know these guys, you've bought their coffee, and chances are been given their coffee for free at shows. They're very, very generous. So come out and show us support. We've got 2 more interviews after this, and then karaoke after that. So it'll be a full day. And we'll walk around the studio as well, too, and probably catch up with you a little bit because you've got people at your table through the whole interview. So thank you for joining us on this little bonus episode with Eerie, Florida. We look forward to having you back in about an hour or so for the next show. Hey, Monster Kids, thanks for hanging out for another episode of Monster Manor. Do us a favor, though, and hit the bell to get reminders of when we add new content. Subscribe to our channel, and while you're waiting for new shows, check out our website at www.monstermanor1313.com. New content at least every other week, sometimes even more often. Like and follow our Facebook page as well for other content. And lastly, if you want to help us out, check out our Patreon under Monster Manor with Scott Fenster. Thanks for hanging out until the end.